Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Trevor with Maker Experiment, and today I'm going to be trying something new that I've never done before. I've watched some YouTube videos that are similar, and I wanted to try and give it a chance, experiment with it, see what works, and that is hydro dipping. So I've seen a lot of people using spray paint and water, and that's the method I'm going to use today with this project. But what I'm going to do is I've laser cut some ornaments, and you can kind of see the detail in there. What I want to do is hydro dip them in different colors, but also try to prep them differently and see how each one behaves and which one works best. My plan for this is to have one that is sanded, both sides. I'm not going to sand in between all the pieces just because that would be impossible and take forever. But I'm going to sand both sides and see how this one does just sanded and then dipped. And then I'm going to use another one, and I'm going to actually paint this one with white flat spray paint to give it a kind of a base primer coat. I might actually use primer, it depends what I have. And then for the third one, I'm going to use filler primer, which is what I usually prep some signs with. I want to see how that behaves. And then the last one, which is the smallest one, I'm actually going to leave plain and just see how it works with just the acrylic. I don't know that the paint will bond with it well, just because it's a super smooth surface. But I'm going to try those different methods, see how each one works. I'm going to dip them probably in a little bit different colors, for one, to tell them apart, and for two, just to have some fun and see what happens. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and prep these and then hopefully be dipping them in a little bit. All of the parts that I'm going to be using for this hydro dipping are now prepped, and I prepped them in 4 different ways to kind of see what effects I'll get based on what I did to them. So the first one is actually this small one. This is 1/4 inch. It's kind of like a translucent white acrylic. So all I did was laser cut it, peeled off the masking, and left it as is. So this one's completely bare, and I want to see how it'll dip just by itself. Next, I have this one, which looks very similar. The difference is on this one, I sanded both sides with 220 grit sandpaper. I want to see if making the surface a little rough is going to help the paint when I dip it adhere a little bit better. And then I have one that is painted with flat white paint, but I wanted to see what putting a flat coat of paint would do. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. And then the last one I'm going to try is actually using a filler primer. So this one I use on a lot of signs that I do, and I found that this helps hide imperfections and cover up things in material. So I'm hoping that it sealed up any last, cracks or fragments that might be in the acrylic. So when I dip it, hopefully this one will come out the best. So my predictions are that the primed one will come out the best. The second best, I'm actually kind of torn between the flat white paint and the sanded. My guess is the flat white paint will do the second best as I drop it and almost break it. And then I'm going to go with third best. It's probably going to be the sanded one. And then I'm guessing the worst one is going to be the one I did nothing to. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens and see what surprises come up. But this is completely new to me. It's a test. I've never done this before, so let's get started. Okay, for this project, I have a tub of water. I have the 4 pieces that I'm going to hydro dip, and then I have spray paint behind me, a few different colors just to see what happens. I know it's not a true test because I'm not using the same paint colors on every finish or every prep style that I did, but I also want to try different things and see what looks cool. And then over here, as I turn the camera, this is my makeshift drying rack. So what's gonna happen with all this is I have some paper clips that I bent and the ornaments that I made. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook the ornament on the paper clip, and then I'm going to hang it and let it dry. So the reason for this is I don't want it to stick to anything. I could probably use wax paper or parchment paper or something. But I had an empty box on hand and I had a dowel rod and some tape. So just going with it. Time to do the first hydro dip and see what happens. So really quick, I am wearing gloves so I don't get paint all over myself. And I'm gonna try to get a good shot on the GoPro underneath. Obviously wear a mask while I'm painting and putting the paint in here. So just take precautions when you're doing this. And let's give it a try. Okay, I just finished hydro dipping all the parts. Minor success, maybe? It's hard to tell right now. So there's a few things that seem to be weird. It might be the paint that I chose. So metallic seemed to dry really fast, and the gold seemed to cover a lot. The silver actually ran out mid spray, so I just threw it out. But some of the colors actually kind of hardened or dried on the surface of the water a little bit faster. It made it more tar-like, maybe, when I dipped it, so it didn't really like spread as well, I don't think. That was kind of the first one that was the purple and the lime green. The other ones dipped pretty well, but until they dry, I don't know how well it actually adhered to the surfaces. So we're gonna wait for them to dry, and when they're dry, I will show you what they look like and see how it went. All right, it is the next day. I actually let these sit overnight to dry just to see what happened, and it's pretty interesting what actually occurred, and I'm going to walk you through it right now. So I had four. One was plain. I didn't do anything to it. I just dipped the clear or translucent white acrylic just by itself. One I sanded with 220 grit sandpaper. One I used a flat white paint, and then the other one I used a filler primer. And the way that I did this is I dipped them straight up and down. So I dipped them like this into the water, which didn't work completely as I wanted to. And I believe that's because of how intricate the item is. But I'm going to show you right here. This one is the plain one, so it's a little bit smaller. You can see it has some on the side. If you look closely, you can see some of that translucent white acrylic coming through. So it didn't bond to the sides of the item in here. I think it's because it's too intricate, and when I dipped it, it didn't really have enough time maybe, or enough area to bond to. So I'm wondering if I dipped it going flat, if that would make a difference. I'm going to try that the next time I do this and see what happens. So this one I would say turned out probably the worst, if not the second worst. The next one is the one that I sanded with 220 grit. So this one I tried to do some Christmas colors, kind of some red, green, and gold. This one had the same issue where it didn't bond to the sides, and because it was just sanded, the clear still shows through, or the translucent white still shows through on the sides. And if you look closely, you'll see that because it's so intricate, parts of the paint actually bonded into the gap and sealed up the gap, so it took away some of the detail of the cut, and that's not what I had intended. Again, I think it's due to the dipping direction that I used. So next time I'll try it flat and see if it makes a difference. This one was probably, this is either the worst or the second worst. I believe it's because it was just the straight clear, and there's not really anything to hide the imperfections. And you can see here at the top, this is purely the translucent white acrylic. It didn't bond at all there, which was kind of disappointing. But it was kind of what I predicted. I expected the sanded and the regular one that didn't have anything done to it to be the worst, and they kind of were. Overall, that was kind of an expected result. The next one is the one that I sprayed with white flat spray paint first. So you can see this one did a little bit better, and actually spray painting it with white kind of helped hide the fact that it didn't coat everywhere, because it looks like I meant to have white on it. So in this case, it still had parts of it where on the sides where it didn't coat it with the blue and the black. I tried to use silver, but it ran out as soon as I started spraying it. But this one actually turned out better than I thought, and it's because the white is hiding the imperfection that it didn't dip all the way. It did work out, the fact that I painted it white, so it looks like it was meant to be this way, but the actual dipping process wasn't perfect on this one either. But it does feel better. It feels like it coated it a little bit better the way that I did dip it. And overall, I'm pleased. Again, there's too much detail, so some of the gaps got filled with paint. I think the next time I'd have to do something less intricate, but we'll see. Then the last one was sprayed with filler primer. So this was a gloss purple and like lime green paint. You can see there's some gray on the insides of the sides. Again, because the dipping didn't take on the sides of the object. Same as with all of them. The one thing I noticed on this one though is When I went to dip it, I think one of these paints reacted with the water surface a little bit faster, so it started to congeal. And instead, when I went to run my finger through it, the paint actually came with me instead of kind of just swirling. I don't know if it's because of the paint type. It was both of these were gloss paints. The flat paints didn't seem to have as much of an issue. I do want to test other types of paints, maybe even like the acrylic tubes, and pour them in and see what that does. But overall, I'd say this one probably was the second best as far as the final feel. This one is kind of tacky in a couple areas, and I think it's because of how it congealed prior to dipping. This one, which was the flat white paint, was probably the best as far as a finish goes. It was just that it didn't dip on the sides. So this one I'm actually the most pleased with. And then third and fourth, it's a toss up between these two. I would say that the plain actually coated better than the sanded one, but I do think that overall the sanded one turned out better than the plain from an overall standpoint, overall look at the end. So I'd give it to sanded, and then the worst would be the plain. Now, this may just be the case for me this one time. I don't know if water temperature makes a difference. I let it warm up to room temperature. But let me know if you have some ideas for hydro dipping, things you want to see me do, leave a comment below. If you have suggestions on what I can do better to improve them and actually, make progress and get the overall finish to be better. I know there are films out there. Eventually, I want to try those, but right now I'm trying to stick to cheaper things like paints or whatever I can pour into water. So if you have any ideas, comment down below and let me know. I'd love to try out different things and try out new projects. And if you like what you saw in the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this. I'm trying to do at least one video a week and trying to do things I've never done before. So not only will I make videos about signs and projects that I make normally, but I also want to do things like this, where I hydro dip a random object, or do some leather work, or something I've never done before. I want to do more experimental stuff, try new things, learn, and just grow as a business. So again, if you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe, like, share with your friends. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions for future projects, and I will see you next time.